You walk into your local grocery store, hoping to pick up your favorite yogurt or a specific cereal you've enjoyed for years, only to discover that it's gone. You search other stores, even look online, but the product seems to have vanished without a trace. Sometimes it's framed as a temporary shortage, but in other cases, the product is gone for good, leaving you wondering what happened. Why do some foods disappear from the market seemingly overnight? The disappearance of food products may seem like a minor inconvenience at first glance, but it actually reveals a deeper story about the global food system. The truth is, food availability is shaped by a complex combination of economic forces, environmental changes, government policies, supply chain logistics, and consumer behavior. Each of these factors influences what companies decide to produce and what products retailers choose to stock on their shelves. Some products become victims of corporate profit strategies. If they aren't profitable enough, they're dropped. Other times, climate change or environmental concerns make it too costly or difficult to continue growing or sourcing key ingredients. And in many cases, government regulations or international trade disputes play a direct role in products being pulled off the market. But pandemics aren't the only cause of food shortages. Climate change is also having a profound impact. As global temperatures rise and weather patterns become more erratic, crops like coffee, cacao, avocados, and seafood are becoming harder to grow. This forces companies to either raise prices or discontinue products altogether. For example, certain specialty coffees that rely on beans from vulnerable growing regions may become unavailable as farmers shift to more climate-resistant crops. Similarly, warming oceans and overfishing are putting pressure on seafood supplies, forcing suppliers to replace popular fish species like cod with less desirable alternatives like tilapia. Another key driver behind disappearing foods is corporate strategy. Companies regularly analyze sales data to determine which products are profitable and which ones are not. If a product isn't selling well or becomes too expensive to produce, companies may decide to discontinue it, even if a small but loyal customer base still enjoys it. At the same time, some companies intentionally limit product availability to create demand. Fast food chains, for example, use planned scarcity strategies, offering items like the McRib sandwich only for limited periods to build hype and encourage impulse buying. Finally, government regulations and shifting consumer preferences also play a role in food disappearances. Regulatory changes, such as ingredient bans or environmental restrictions, can force companies to reformulate or discontinue products. Meanwhile, changing consumer trends, like the growing demand for plant-based foods, mean that traditional meat products or processed snacks may quietly vanish from the market to make room for new alternatives. Throughout this video, we'll explore the many hidden reasons behind disappearing foods, from supply chain breakdowns to corporate decisions, environmental challenges, and shifting market trends. We'll dive into real-world case studies and controversial insights to uncover how these forces interact to shape the foods available to us. Along the way, we'll also offer practical advice on how consumers can adapt to product discontinuations and shortages. By the end of this deep dive, you'll have a clearer understanding of the factors driving food availability, and you might even change the way you look at your grocery store. The foods we take for granted today might not be on shelves tomorrow, but by understanding these forces, we can better prepare for the changing landscape of food consumption. Supply chain fragility. The domino effect of global disruptions. When you walk into a grocery store, it's easy to assume that every product on the shelf got there smoothly. But behind the scenes, the availability of food relies on complex, global supply chains, an interconnected network involving farmers, manufacturers, transportation companies, distribution centers, and retailers. The goal of this system is to deliver food efficiently, often across multiple countries, to keep shelves stocked and costs low. However, this same interconnectedness also makes supply chains fragile. Even small disruptions at any point can ripple across the system, causing shortages or permanent product discontinuations. COVID-19 pandemic, a stress test for global supply chains. The COVID-19 pandemic was perhaps the most glaring example of how supply chain fragility affects food availability. In 2020, as the world shut down to curb the spread of the virus, every link in the food supply chain was affected. Factories were forced to reduce production or close altogether due to outbreaks and labor shortages, while transportation networks were overwhelmed by demand. Ports were understaffed, leading to shipping delays, and retailers struggled to keep up with the sudden surge in panic buying. Dairy farmers dumping milk. One of the most shocking impacts of the pandemic occurred in the dairy industry. With restaurants, schools, and coffee shops closed, demand for milk products plummeted overnight. Dairy farmers were unable to redirect their supply to supermarkets fast enough due to processing bottlenecks. As a result, millions of gallons of milk were dumped on farms, even as consumers faced shortages of milk, butter, and yogurt in stores. Panic buying and empty-shelved supermarkets across the globe were stripped of essentials like flour, pasta, yeast, and canned goods within days. Consumers, fearful of prolonged lockdowns, stocked up on non-perishable foods. Manufacturers, caught off guard by the sudden surge in demand, had to scale back their product lines to focus on high-demand items. Specialty products, like niche frozen meals or flavored snacks, were discontinued to make room for essentials. Some of these items still haven't returned to store shelves, as manufacturers realized they could boost profits by focusing on fewer products. The Suez Canal blockage. How one ship disrupted global trade. The Suez Canal blockage in March 2021 is another example of how delicate supply chains can be. When the Ever Given, a 400-meter-long cargo ship, became stuck in the canal, it blocked one of the most important trade routes in the world for 6 days. This seemingly isolated incident caused massive disruptions across multiple industries, including food. Impact on perishable foods. Many of the ships waiting behind the Ever Given were carrying perishable goods, such as seafood, dairy products, and fresh fruits. By the time these shipments reached their destinations, a significant portion of the food had spoiled, resulting in millions of dollars in losses. Suppliers were forced to reduce future orders of these products, anticipating similar risks in future shipments. Regional shortages in Europe and the Middle East. Europe and the Middle East, two regions heavily reliant on goods transported through the Suez Canal, experienced temporary shortages of products like seafood, grains, and coffee. Many retailers opted to scale back their orders of perishable foods and focus instead on more reliable products, leading to some items being permanently removed from store inventories. Labor strikes. A growing problem for supply chains. Labor strikes, especially at ports and transportation hubs, represent another significant threat to food availability. These strikes disrupt the movement of goods, causing delays that ripple across the entire supply chain. In some cases, retailers cancel contracts with suppliers to avoid further delays, which can lead to long-term product shortages. The ripple effect of transportation costs. Even when products are available, rising transportation costs can make it too expensive to deliver them profitably. The cost of shipping containers rose dramatically in 2021 and 2022, driven by high demand and limited capacity. For some companies, the increased shipping costs made it unfeasible to continue selling certain products internationally. As a result, many imported goods, from exotic fruits to specialty seafood, disappeared from store shelves. Climate change. How environmental shifts shape food availability. Climate change isn't just about rising temperatures, it's also about shifting weather patterns, unpredictable rainfall, droughts, floods, and natural disasters. For the global food system, these environmental changes present serious challenges. Key crops are becoming harder to grow, and farmers are being forced to either adapt or abandon production. Some foods are becoming increasingly scarce, leading to higher prices, reformulations, or discontinuations. From shrinking coffee regions to depleted fish stocks, climate change is reshaping what ends up on our plates. The coffee crisis. A morning ritual at risk. Coffee is one of the most beloved beverages in the world, with over 2 billion cups consumed every day. However, coffee production is highly vulnerable to climate change. The plant requires specific conditions, moderate temperatures, adequate rainfall, and steady humidity, to thrive. Unfortunately, rising global temperatures and irregular rainfall patterns are pushing many coffee-growing regions beyond their limits. Key coffee regions under threat. Brazil and Colombia, two of the world's largest coffee producers, are experiencing frequent droughts that are cutting crop yields. In Ethiopia, where high-quality Arabica beans are grown, erratic rainfall is making it difficult for farmers to maintain consistent yields. The International Coffee Organization estimates that by 2050, more than 50% of the land currently used for coffee production will no longer be suitable. This has forced some farmers to switch to more heat-tolerant crops, such as cashews or cocoa, which means certain specialty coffee blends could soon disappear from store shelves. As coffee supplies dwindle, prices are rising. Specialty coffees from regions like Ethiopia and Costa Rica are becoming harder to source, and some companies are quietly phasing out these products in favor of more readily available blends. If the situation continues, your morning cup of coffee may soon come with a higher price tag, or fewer options. Chocolate. The future of sweet treats under threat. Chocolate lovers are also feeling the effects of climate change. The cacao tree, which produces the seeds needed for chocolate, requires a stable tropical environment with plenty of rainfall and consistent temperatures. Unfortunately, cacao farms in Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, which produce over 60% of the world's cacao, are facing increasingly erratic weather conditions. Droughts, heavy rainfall, and disease outbreaks have become common, reducing yields and making cacao more expensive to grow. Deforestation and its consequences. Adding to the challenge is deforestation. To keep up with demand, farmers have been clearing more land to grow cacao. However, deforestation has further destabilized the climate in these regions, creating a vicious cycle where cacao production becomes even more unsustainable. This has forced some chocolate producers to reduce product lines or focus only on high-margin items, such as luxury chocolate bars. The seafood crisis, warming oceans and shrinking fish stocks. The world's oceans are also feeling the impact of climate change. As ocean temperatures rise, fish populations are being pushed out of their natural habitats, and some species are becoming harder to catch. Key seafood stocks, such as Atlantic cod, salmon, and tuna, are experiencing significant declines. Impact of warming oceans on marine life. Fish are highly sensitive to temperature changes. As the water warms, many species migrate to colder regions, leaving traditional fishing areas with fewer resources. This has disrupted the fishing industry in regions that rely on specific fish stocks. Overfishing has further exacerbated the issue, causing certain species to become critically endangered. Avocados and almonds. The cost of water-intensive crops. Certain crops are not only affected by changing weather patterns but also by the availability of water. Avocados and almonds, two popular food items, are under threat due to water scarcity in regions like California and Mexico. Both crops require enormous amounts of water to grow, making them increasingly unsustainable as droughts become more frequent and severe. The avocado dilemma. On average, it takes 320 liters of water to produce just one avocado. In drought-prone regions like California, farmers are struggling to maintain avocado orchards, leading to smaller harvests and higher prices. Mexico, the world's largest avocado exporter, is also facing environmental pressures, with some farmers switching to less water-intensive crops like agave, used for tequila production. Almond farming under scrutiny. Almond farming faces similar challenges. With 80% of the world's almonds coming from California, the state's water crisis has put significant pressure on the industry. Environmental activists argue that almond farming is unsustainable, as it diverts water away from other essential crops. Some smaller almond producers have closed their farms or switched to more sustainable crops, causing fluctuations in supply and price. Practical impacts on consumers. Paying more for less. As climate change continues to disrupt agriculture, consumers will likely see higher prices and reduced availability of certain foods. Companies are responding to these challenges in various ways. Product discontinuations. When crops become too expensive or difficult to grow, some food products are removed from the market altogether. Reformulations. Some companies switch ingredients or change recipes to use more readily available substitutes. For example, certain chocolate bars now contain less real cocoa, relying on flavor enhancers instead. New product trends. As traditional crops become less viable, companies are exploring alternatives. Expect to see more plant-based substitutes and lab-grown seafood as companies attempt to navigate these environmental challenges. What the future holds. Adapting to a changing environment. Experts warn that unless global efforts are made to combat climate change, the disruption to food production will only intensify. Crops that were once staples may become luxuries, and certain fish species could disappear from markets altogether. However, some companies and farmers are finding ways to adapt. Agroforestry practices, where trees are planted alongside crops, are helping cacao farmers restore ecosystems and improve yields. Vertical farming and hydroponics are being explored as ways to grow crops with minimal water usage. The aquaculture industry is growing, offering new solutions for sustainable fish farming. While these innovations offer hope, the reality is that climate change will continue to reshape the food landscape for years to come. As consumers, it's important to understand these changes and prepare for a future where certain foods may no longer be available. The fall of food fads. What happens when trends fade? Some foods disappear simply because consumer interest shifts. Health food trends, in particular, are prone to rapid rise and fall cycles. Take kale chips, for example. Once marketed as the ultimate superfood snack, kale chips saw explosive growth in the early 2010s. However, as the trend faded, sales plummeted, forcing many brands to discontinue their kale-based products. Similarly, the gluten-free trend, which gained momentum in the 2010s, has begun to lose steam as fewer consumers adopt gluten-free diets. Products that once filled entire aisles, like gluten-free cookies, breads, and pastas, are now seeing reduced shelf space as retailers pivot toward newer trends. Nostalgia marketing, reviving old favorites. Interestingly, some discontinued products return for limited time runs as companies tap into consumer nostalgia. Brands like Pepsi have reintroduced Crystal Pepsi, a clear cola originally launched in the 1990s, for short periods, generating excitement and media buzz. These nostalgic comebacks give consumers the chance to relive their favorite flavors, but they are often temporary and designed to boost short-term sales rather than make a permanent return. Coping strategies for consumers. What to do when foods disappear? For consumers, the disappearance of a beloved product can be both frustrating and inconvenient. However, there are ways to adapt and cope when products are no longer available. By exploring alternatives, stocking up, or even creating DIY versions of discontinued foods, consumers can stay ahead of shortages and minimize the impact on their daily routines. Find alternatives from other brands. When a product disappears, the simplest solution is to look for a similar product from another brand. Many companies produce comparable items, and with a little experimentation, consumers can find new favorites. For example, if a specific yogurt flavor is discontinued, it's worth exploring options from competitor brands or local producers. Stock up when you spot rare products. If you notice that a product you love is becoming harder to find, stocking up can be a smart move. Buying in bulk ensures that you have enough supply to last, especially if the product is at risk of being discontinued. Be sure to check expiration dates and store items properly to avoid waste. Try DIY recipes to recreate lost products. In the age of the internet, copycat recipes abound. If a product you love disappears, there's a good chance someone has created a DIY version that you can make at home. Websites, blogs, and YouTube tutorials provide step-by-step instructions for recreating snacks, sauces, and desserts. For example, enthusiasts have shared copycat recipes for everything from discontinued fast food sauces to favorite cookies and cereals. Stay informed about market trends. Keeping an eye on food trends and market news can help consumers anticipate which products might disappear. Following news about supply chains, climate change, or new regulations provides valuable insight into what foods are likely to become scarce. Consumers can also join online communities where people share updates on hard-to-find items and exchange tips for sourcing rare products. While it can be disappointing when foods disappear, being proactive and adaptable can help consumers navigate shortages with minimal disruption. By exploring alternatives, trying DIY solutions, and staying informed, consumers can maintain access to the foods they love, even in a constantly changing market. As we've explored throughout this video, the disappearance of foods from the market reflects a complex web of global forces. Supply chain disruptions, climate change, corporate decisions, government regulations, and shifting consumer behavior all play a role in what we find, or don't find, on grocery store shelves. While these factors may seem beyond our control, understanding them helps us make better food choices and anticipate changes in the market. Some disappearances are temporary, as seen with seasonal products or supply chain delays, while others are permanent, driven by profitability concerns or environmental challenges. For example, coffee blends from vulnerable regions may vanish due to rising temperatures, or seafood varieties may become unavailable as fish stocks decline. In other cases, products disappear simply because consumer preferences change, pushing companies to introduce new items that fit current trends. Corporate strategies also play a significant role. Companies frequently reformulate products, discontinue low-performing lines, or introduce limited-time offers to boost profits. Meanwhile, government regulations, such as ingredient bans or environmental policies, can force companies to rethink their offerings, leading to further product discontinuations. Adaptability is essential in a constantly evolving food landscape. As consumers, we can prepare for changes by staying informed, trying new products, and embracing alternatives. Learning how to navigate shortages and product discontinuations ensures that we remain flexible and open to new flavors and options. In the future, some foods we love today may no longer be available, but that doesn't mean we have to give up our favorite experiences. By understanding the forces shaping food availability and being proactive, we can embrace new trends and discover exciting new foods along the way.